Talking about Kelly Haney, he's a friend of mine. I count him as a mentor. I count him as always someone to look up to. I met him when I was a little boy, and he was talking about his art at an art show at Sequoia High School. I was just a student at Seneca Indian School, and back in the 70s, all the Indian schools would come together and share art. And Kelly was one of the presenters, and he had us kids in the classroom, and he showed his painting techniques on a chalkboard. And a room full of Indian kids, we hadn't seen a chalkboard used for anything except for letters, numbers. And what Kelly did is he drew a circle, and he said, "What's this?" And we said, "Zero, letter O." And then he added a few more lines. He says, "What's this?" He said, "Oh, it's a face." And then he commenced to filling in the details of that face to such a degree that we were completely blown away with the ability to make that surface that we had only seen letters and numbers on into the coolest Indian face we had ever seen. And he did it with chalk, and it just did it right in front of us. And so, that was my introduction to Kelly Haney, and along with all the other kids, we followed his career. And so we fast forward into my jewelry career when I was creating things out of copper, silver, and gold. And I was at an art show in Tulsa, and I had created a 4-tiered turtle gorget with Seminole patchwork on it. And it was copper, and it had Indian head pennies from the early 1900s. And I had made it to coincide with Oklahoma's statehood in the coin dates. Well, Kelly, he saw that and appreciated it. He says, "I want that." He acknowledged my art. He collected it for himself, and he hung that in his home. We eventually went on to work on the Muskogee canoe paddle project, and we even went down into the Everglades and worked with Pedro Cepeda to carve cypress into canoe paddles and paint those. Kelly is known for the Guardian, the sculpture on top of the Oklahoma State Capitol, and it's so impressive, and it's such an achievement, not only to sculpt it but to get it up there and to orchestrate the politics around how for a Native American to be on top of the Capitol. Putting this together just to talk about how the community was always affected by Kelly's decisions. He thought of the community. It wasn't just Indians. He thought of everyone, and he was inclusive. And so I think about the legislation that he passed for roads and schools, and even the Enoch Haney Center in Seminole, where he was inaugurated as chief of the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma, and I got to be there for that moment. And so I see how the community came together for his services, knowing that he was going to have this his celebration of life at First Americans Museum. And I talked with the family, and they said we could use a good native urn and to hold his ashes. And so I said, I'd like to take that on. So I went back to Santa Fe, and I called in a crew of people to help me, and everyone banded together, and we got a beautiful, incredible urn to represent and of the caliber of a person that Kelly was, and all these things to include symbols of his life, such as his clan, his Sweet Potato Clan, and such as the 7 leaves representing his 7 children, and Mother Earth welcoming him back as the shape of the urn. And then the head of that urn is the Seminole Nation tribal seal that I had originally done the crowns for back in the early 2000s. And the details that are in the base, such as the wood of the base of the urn is cypress wood that we actually went down there and harvested, and he actually was carving while we were there. These the elements were the urn that we created for his ashes, and then also a turban band that I had created for him for his inauguration. And then most importantly, there was a flute made by his son. The Haney family, well, Kelly was an important flutist, and his father, Woodrow Haney, was an important flutist, and his sons carry on that tradition. And so that's part of the music that you're hearing now, and we appreciate all this legacy of art. So all these important elements go into an acknowledgement of a wonderful man who was a mentor and a father and an artist and a leader. And we always appreciate the things that he left us. Was a wonderful legacy of art and family that we still get to enjoy.